Thank you. Hello. Is it working? Yeah. It was a long day. Hope you get coffee. I promise it will be lighter than any other talks. Let's start with 2 questions. With a show of hands, how many of you can name an app or multiple apps that are just perfect? Like the UI is smooth, there are no bugs, everything is just what you expected. Can you think of one app or a couple of apps like this? No one? Yeah? Telegram. OK. What? Which one? Darkstack. OK. OK. Any more? One more? I don't hear you. Allbank? I don't know it. No. Yes. And second question, again with a show of hands, how many of you can think about like really, really terrible app, like that you cringe every time you need to open it, or you really upset every time you get a new update? Okay, how many of you? Okay, a lot more. Yeah, which one? Facebook. Okay, Facebook. There are some Facebook developers in the crowd, so I don't want to shame them. But yes, much more people upset or get upset about some specific apps. And I'm going to talk about the second one today. But before we begin, I want to introduce myself. I'm Shem Magnezi. I'm from Tel Aviv, Israel. And I'm a staff software engineer in WeWork, as you can see on my shirt. I have more than a decade of experience in developing software, server-side, big data, obviously application development, and currently web apps. And I'm really passionate about developing application, whether it's Android or iOS, because I really love to see the immediate impact about the users and think about how they're going to think about my app. And even though I'm not currently working on native apps, I'm still working on my side project and working with a couple of startups. And I see a lot of patterns that are repeating. Some of them are good, most of them are bad. And just to set the stage, because I delivered this talk a couple of times, and people might confused about the title, and many of them thought that I might going to talk about badass apps, like really, really good apps that are amazing and stuff like this. Nope, this is not the case. So maybe I'm going to talk about not that good apps that a bit buggy and have some kind of errors. Nope. Today, I want to talk about the really, really terrible apps that every time you open it, you just leave your phone aside and want to cry in the corner. Okay? This is the state of mind that I want you to be in this talk. I'm going to name a couple of apps, very like most popular apps, and we'll see the bad patterns or the bad things that happen there that really want me to cry sometimes. But why? Why we even talk about those bad patterns? I feel, as a developer, that there are tons of resources, videos, blog posts out there about how to build good apps, like how to build the UI, how to release your features, how to structure your code, and things like this with good things in mind. But no one talks about the dark sides, the bad patterns that happen out there. And I do want to encourage us to talk about those bad patterns, because by acknowledge those bad patterns and those terrible ways to screw out your apps, we will learn how to avoid this and move from the bad patterns to more better one. Okay? But before we begin in deep to and dive to a couple of rules that I got a name. I have some couple of disclaimers. First one, there are many ways to ruin your app. Today I'm going to name only 10, but there are like dozens. There are dozens of ways for you to make your users very frustrated. Okay? So don't limit yourself only to the ones that I'm going to list. So open your mind and think about, for yourself about other ways that you can win others up. Second one, it is not all or nothing. It's not like there are two buckets or two types of application. One of them are amazing and good and great, and the other is like horrible and terrible. Most of the apps, and most like 95 or 98% of the application are laying somewhere between those. There might be like amazing apps, and again, I'm going to show you amazing and very popular apps that are very good. I love them. But there's something really wrong with one feature or one aspect of their apps. So even if you have perfect app, I can't believe that you can come up with this talk with one way to ruin your app. Okay? It's not everything is good or everything is bad. And the last one is some of the rules, or most of the rules, can be depend on the time or the place. Okay? So for example, a couple of years ago, Google was really against bottom navigation. Okay? It was very common in iOS, but Google apps didn't really use those, and Google considered those this kind of pattern as an anti-pattern. But suddenly, I think 2 years ago, Google Photos released a new version with bottom navigation. And since then, it was OK. Same for chat bubbles that was very widely spread on Android, but Google didn't use it, and now they support it as in the framework. So rules can be changed over time, and it can also change between countries or between cultures. So for example, I learned for a lot of sessions with iOS developers that every app should do one thing and one thing only, and it should do it very, very good. So if you're developing a gallery app, only focus on photos and maybe editing and maybe sharing, but only this. This is like a common thread between US and Western countries. But when you come to China, you suddenly see applications like WeChat. And WeChat, for the one that don't know WeChat started as a chatting app and then evolved and now is a chatting app and a news feed and the way to get a cab and the way to pay in the stores. So it's really depend on the place or the culture that you are aiming for. Okay? So without further ado, let's start with the first rule. Let's say that we want to build very, very simple app. The simple app that I can think of is maybe a flashlight. Flashlight with a single screen, with a single button, that every time you push this button, the flashlight is turned on, and you can push it again, and it's turned off. And what I need from this kind of app, maybe I need some kind of access to the light, to the backlight, and I probably gonna need some kind of permission or access to the photos and videos, right? Obviously, this is a flashlight. And I also need permission to the contract and the storage, okay? All these photos are taken from, like, I'm updating the slide from time to time, so I updated last week. And this is like very short search for flashlight apps. All of them are from different apps. So for you, as an app developer, just ask as many permissions as possible. Okay? It doesn't matter if your app needs it. Maybe it will need it in the future. But just ask, no matter what you are doing, ask those permissions. But there is always going to be some very annoying users. They won't gonna let you use those permissions, right? They're gonna push cancel or reject whatever pop-up you're gonna show them. So bonus points for those developers that won't let those users use the app, okay? Just don't let them. Block the app. Okay, are we good? Second one. Let's say we open up our, we finish our, let's say we finish the conference, and we're getting back to our hotel. Maybe we take a subway, and before we start surfing on Facebook or doing something other than this, we open up our to-do list app to see if we need to do something, and we see something like this. So we are OK. We don't need to do anything, and we can get back to Twitter to fight with someone on the internet. And I'm calling it the white screen of death, because every time you see something like this, what do you think? What happened? Like, maybe it's already fetched all the items, and there is something, and there is nothing to do. Maybe there is a problem. Maybe it's still loading. You don't really know what happened. So every time I see this kind of screen, I just very, very confused, and I'm not sure what's happening behind the scene. So my tip for you, as developer or designer or product manager, don't communicate anything to the user. Let them figure out alone what they need to do. Let them guess if you are loading. Maybe you have like slow internet connection. Maybe there is a problem. Okay? Let them figure it out and leave them confused. The third rule for a very terrible app is, let's take Amazon, for example. Let's say I want to order a book or two from Amazon because I want to look smart. So I'm open up the Amazon app. It's actually something that really happened to me. I use Amazon via Chrome. And I choose a book or two and go to the checkout page. And then on the checkout page, I need to fill out tons of information. What is my first name? What is my last name? What is like my billing address? What is the city, the street number? What is the zip code? I don't remember my zip code. I always ask my wife. She tells me what is the zip code. What else? I need my credit card. OK, I'm putting my phone aside. I'm going to get my credit card from the wallet, putting out my credit card, getting my phone again, and all from was visit. OK? This is kind of feeling when you encounter this kind of behavior. So what happened behind the scene? As a developer, we know what happened behind the scene. When I put my phone down and pick it up again, the screen was rotated, OK? And in Android, every time the screen is rotated, the screen is recreated. Great way to do it. And there are a couple of solutions for this. The best one and the one that I like the most is just disable the phone rotating. Okay? Why do anyone need this kind of a function? But yeah, there are a lot of ways to do it, especially in Android, and it's actually pretty easy. At least if you just put an ID for your view, the Android framework will restore it. And there are a lot of tools, both for iOS and Android. But again, we don't want to help our users, right? We want to keep them frustrated. We want them to fill out all this information from beginning. So don't bother. Don't bother to save the screen state. All right? Next up. When I landed in Barcelona yesterday, I think it was yesterday, I want some kind of way to navigate in the city. Okay, it's a new city. I've been here only once. Don't remember much from the time that I was here 10 years ago. And I want some way to navigate in the city. So I downloaded an app. Okay, I want to download an app, and I search something in the Play Store, something like navigation or maps or something like this. And I saw a pretty popular app. I don't know it. Very anonymous app that might help me. Again, not to name anyone. But I saw it weighed 70 mega. 70 megabytes. It's pretty huge, I think, especially when I'm abroad and the roaming is open and every megabyte costs a lot of money for me. So I want to understand why. Why it weighs so much. Okay, so I get back to the hotel. When I got to the hotel, I had Wi-Fi, so I can download whatever I can, whatever I want. And I started digging and see what happened inside this application, what the file contains. Okay, so let's start from the basic. Every app should have some kind of icons, right? So there are plenty of icons there, like dozens of them. But instead of using like actual images, they could easily use some kind of SVGs or text or vector icons. This way, they would use text-based files that weigh much less instead of images. And remember that those images will be multiplied by 4 or 5, depending on a couple of resolutions that you support. So maybe each one of them is just 1 kilobyte or less, but once you have dozens of them, multiply by 4 or 5, it started to accumulate, okay? But that's not the end, because I started digging a bit more, and saw very huge file that I'm not sure if you are able to see, but it weighed like 700 kilobytes. For an image that shows where you're using the carpool feature. I must say that I never used it, but even though I never used it, I still have 700 kilobyte image multiplied by 4. Again, 4 or 5. As you can see, this is only the XX HDPI. What about the XXX, X, etc.? But this is reasonable enough because I dig a little more. And I started to see that there is a huge directory that weighed 2 megabytes. What's there in this directory? Hundreds of files that describe the font format for each and every country in the world. I must say that I never visit so many countries. I just need the Spanish format and maybe the Israeli format. That's about it. And it can be only a couple of tens of kilobytes. But that's not it, okay? 2 megabytes, pretty reasonable. Then I saw that I have 2 copies of native code, okay? For the one that's not familiar with native code on Android, when you use JNI code or C code, you need to compile it to the right architecture. And in Android, it's usually ARM v7, but there are also all devices that uses ARM architecture. So this application compiled this source code to both ARM and ARM v7, and they released it together. So I, as an Android user that have ARM v7, has a copy of those files that weighed 27 megabytes. So I must say that they did really, really great job here, okay? They didn't bother to optimize the app size. Maybe they just don't want people like me that using the app abroad, or people that don't have good internet connection, or just don't have space on their device to use their apps, and they completely succeed in this, okay? They got an A. Next up, more for the designers. So there are a lot of people in Google that sat a couple of years ago and actually think about how apps should look like, how a user should interact with the applications and with the screens, and how the animation should look like. And they come up with the material design spec. It's really amazing. It's still it's still relevant also 2 or 3 years after they release it. And then the Lingo decided not to listen to anyone. And this is reasonable, yeah? Because they're going to need to explain to some users how to navigate, because there are some bottom navigation, but there are something in the top. This is not really a tabs, but OK. But in the settings on the right, and there is a couple of navigation, like bottom navigation and middle tabs. A bit confusing. I wouldn't say it's bad, but it's a bit confusing. And someone like me that's not used to this kind of pattern need to think a bit, especially when install it and see it on first. But then there is Craigslist, that they clearly read the material design spec. They clearly know what are card, what is a drawer, what is detail screen, what is multi-step process, but they somehow understand it differently. OK? That's OK. That's OK. So there is very, very, I would say, confusing things here, like the search there. I'm not sure if you are able to see, but there are the filters, and now you're able to switch between a couple of views. But yeah, definitely, when I opened the Craigslist on the first time, I thinking about it and didn't know anything or how I should behave on those screens or those flows, and how I change things. So if you want to keep your users very confused and look like this every time they open the app or every time they're getting a new update, this is the way to do it. Don't listen to people smarter than you. You are the one that understand it. You are the one that know your users. Just bring your own patterns. Next up. Sorry. So you're excited. You're curious. What happened next? So this is one of my favorite apps. Inbox. RIP Inbox. Who uses Inbox? I know you are sad. Who uses Inbox there, here or used? OK. I liked it very much. And I was really sad when Google killed it. And I truly think it was a good app. But, and there is always a but, when I switched the phone and I didn't need to install all my apps again, I obviously installed Inbox from scratch. And when you install Inbox, you get some kind of intro. 5 stages of intro that they explain you what you need to do and how it's different from Gmail and how you interact with your email and what is like moving to done, stuff like this. And I'm already familiar with this, and I obviously didn't read anything on this. And then when you actually want to read the email, there is a pop-up that say, hey, just so you know, there is a done feature that you can use. It's different from Gmail. Remember, this is different from Gmail. Don't forget. OK, I know the app. Let me read the damn email. And then when I actually want to click on the email and see what's new, they show me a hint all over the screen that say, hey, there is something feature that let you, yeah, OK, I got it. Like, it took me like 1 minute or so to actually read the email. And there is the Suchi app that they had. Intro with 7 screens that you cannot skip any of them. In some of them, you actually need to fill some stuff. And it is before you actually have the chance to actually use the app. And I say that app is like a joke. If you need to explain it, something wrong there. So creating an intro and overlay and hints, not even in context, yeah? You don't even explore the app. You don't really know what happened there. No one's going to read this, yeah? Who is here read any of the intros or pop-ups that they can see. No one really read it. So instead of using all this, you can do smarter things. But we are not for this. We are here to make the user frustrated and don't let them understand fully the app. Okay? So put as many description as you can, even before they see the first screen. Okay, for the next one, someone here familiar with Prisma, the Prisma app? Okay, it was very, very cool a couple of years ago. It let you take picture and giving you very cool filters and effects on top of it. So for me, as really bad photographer, the picture look reasonable. So they had like very simple screen to take a picture and to turn on and off the flash and to make your phone a tablet. I don't know what it is. And there is the Get app. Get app is an Israeli company. It's like an Uber, very similar to Uber. That they have a satellite or a candy. I'm not sure. I actually delivered this talk in Israel a couple of years ago, and someone from Get was in the crowd. And I did the same gig like this, and I saw him with the Get shirt, and I asked him what it is, and he said with a lot of confidence, "This is a satellite. It's actually a candy." Again, since then they changed the app. I don't know if it's because of me, but let me imagine. And the next app, this is Evernote. Again, an app that I really, really like and I use a lot. And this is like a bit outdated screenshot, but again, I'm too afraid to check it out. This is my notes there. I'm too afraid to know what happened. And this is like a new version. I don't know what this is. Okay? So again, if you want to leave your users confused, I guess, or I don't know, risky maybe in sometimes, use those very mysterious icons. Ignore all the dozens of icons, maybe hundreds of icons that Google and iOS give you. Come up with your own for the 48 or 48 pixels icons. The 8th one. So I did a lot of shaming for other apps, and I want to also bring something on my own. This is the WeWork app. Okay. How many of you know WeWork? Okay. So we, as a company, have a simple app for our members, the one that sits inside WeWork location, where they able to communicate with each other or open a tickets or just book a conference room. But this is the first screen that you see, because you need to log in. And every time that I'm open an app or joining a new site or just seeing a registration form where there is an email and a password, and you need to create a new account, and I need to come out with a password on my own, this is like the way that it goes. I'm seeing it. OK, thank you. It was nice. I would never create any account on your site, because who remember any password that it has beside Facebook or Twitter or Google? Maybe GitHub. I don't know. But this is the only password that I remember. So this is one thing. And the other one, I don't trust anyone to save my password. Okay? Even though those are my friends, I am able to see the code. I am able to see the code in GitHub. I know what it does behind the scene. And I still don't trust my friend to save my password. So yes, you can use single sign-on or things like this, log in with Facebook or Google, but don't bother. Okay? you are one of a kind, you are smart enough, you can create your registration form. I trust you. No, I don't. OK, so let's talk a bit about the product people. OK, me as an engineer, when I started a new project in Android Studio, one of the first questions that I get from the Android Studio itself is, what is the minimum version that you want to support, right? Because this is something that you need to name in your manifest. And the first thing that I open up is the Android dashboard with all the version. This is relatively updated pie chart of the version. And you can see that most of the users use the pretty updated version. And iOS, it's much better because this is Apple. But again, I will go to my product manager and ask him, what is the minimum version that you want to support? And this is the breakdown of the users. And obviously, what the product manager will say, I want this. I really want those very, very old devices users, because there are 10 of them, and they are really, really important somehow. So talking to you product managers in the crowd, don't give your developers easy times, OK? Insist on those 40 or something users in the crowd, in the Android ecosystem. And the thing is, maybe your high-end video editing app might work on those devices, though I doubt it, but you really need it to be available out there. Last one. Again, you as a team want to decide on new feature, OK? And maybe it happened with the planning, maybe it happened in the daily, I don't know. But let's say you want to add a new button to your application, and the button will give you $5. And you as a developer will say, OK, it's pretty easy. I will add a small button in the center of the screen. It will be red, and every time the user will hit it, we'll get $5. And then the designer will say, I don't care about the size of the button, but it has to be green, because. And then the product manager get inside this argument and say, I don't care about the color, but it has to be on all the screen, like very, very big. And everyone has its own opinion, and everyone think is the right, and everyone really insists of actually do it in his own way. So the other way around is actually using a real data. Maybe use an A/B testing, maybe deliver a couple of versions or flavors of this specific feature, and actually test it, what engaged more, what convert more, or stuff like this. But this is nonsense. Trust your instinct. Don't use any real data, and you are the right. You know what's the best, and just don't listen to any other person. OK? So just to summarize it up, your perfectly bad app has like these 10 or more rules that you can follow. But on more serious note, I want to show you what is the right way, OK? Though it might be obvious for some of you, but instead of asking so many permissions that is not really related to your application, just ask what you need. Please, just ask what you need. I'm just sick and tired from applications that ask me unrelated and non-relevant permission that I know what they are doing behind the scene. They're actually sending my data, right? So just ask what you need. Give me a break. Instead of putting some mysterious or white screen and waiting for things to happen, communicate. Communicate and use empty state or loading, or just do things faster, or using, as the one that before me described, put more emphasis on offline mode. and think about it. Think about what happens if you are using slow connections, what happens if there is no data, and stuff like this. Save the screen state. Save the user's input and stuff that is done. It's not just forms. It's even the place that it got in the scrolling. If it's very, very long screen, you don't want to open it up after a phone call and understand that you got back to the first one, like the top of the screen. Save the screen state. Instead of using images, Android and Apple give you the tools to use maybe vectors or dynamic modules. Please use this. Use the material design. It's pretty straightforward. There is a lot of thinking behind it. Instead of giving really long description about what your app is doing before even the user understand what the app is doing or how it looks like, give hints in place, in context, and let them figure out and maybe build more intuitive UI. As I said, there are tons of icons out there that are more familiar, that are more popular, that people actually understand. Maybe it shouldn't be an icon. Maybe it should be a text. Use single sign-on or social login or something like this. People don't want to create a new password or new account for every time that they're using your app. Know your users and understand what is the right users and what is the right version to support. Probably not the oldest one. And instead of using real data, instead of not using the real data, use real data. Test your users. No one really knows how the user will react. Okay? So this is basically it, with a really strange line between 8 and 9. As I said, there are many more rules. I divided to 10 for developer, 10 for product manager, and 10 for designers. You can see it in my blog. I think we have time for questions right now, and that's it.
OK, great. So a couple of questions for you. One of the top ones is dropping support for older versions obviously just isn't always possible, and it depends on what your market is and what your priorities are. When you can't do that, what do you think you should do?
When you can't actually know your audience?
When you can't drop support for older versions of an operating system.
Again, you don't know your users, or you don't know... What is the question exactly?
When dropping support for older versions is not always possible, depending on your situation, what can you do? Yeah,
so it's really a pain to support those older versions. One thing that works for me, it's like in some way just splitting up to 2 applications. One is for more older devices. It's maybe a slim version, maybe a bit of outdated, and then give the high-end users a very slick experience, better experience. Just don't forget those users and give them some kind of more minimal experience, but maybe this is one solution. And again, there are some applications that you must support those old users, but maybe you're not one of those cases.
More specific question about upper navigation icons. Do you think generally that it's not a good pattern, or is it more about bad icons?
I think it's generally not that good because it's really minimal. You have only 1 or 2 actions. Just keep like the main one. And again, it's really, really small. You can't communicate a lot of what we're doing. So maybe it's save or settings or dismiss or something like this. Very like the most familiar one, but be careful there.
And obviously, we weren't all able to avoid some of these anti-patterns in the apps that we work on. Like what kind of processes, or how do you feel like you can put this in place to stop these kind of things from happening?
So we communicate a lot. We sometimes start with something, and then we understand this is not the best way to do it. So you need always to be prepared and be cautious and like get some kind of feedback from the users, understand what is the right way to do so.
And generally, when it comes to onboarding, do you think that that's always a bad pattern, or do you think when it's a really complex feature or something that's new, is that a different case?
Okay, so put some kind of intro, okay? There are some users that don't really familiar with, although they actually download it from the store, so they obviously search for this kind of application, but put it minimal, 1 or 2 screens, and then let them explore, let them see what's happening in this the application. And there is some pattern that I saw, it's really advanced, but it just analyze the user behavior and understand when he's confused, when he's visiting a couple of screens and don't really know what happened, then maybe show him a hint, maybe show him a pop-up, something like this.
And you know, when these things often are patterns, they get established, it's because somebody big does them, hamburger menu or something like that. You know, what do you think we should all do to try to spot things that are trends that maybe aren't actually good patterns?
So, for example, Facebook, when they introduced the hamburger menu, I imagine that one, they have the people to understand what is the right pattern, and they did a lot of research. And second, they have the power to educate the users. So piggyback on those and just copy them or use their educated users. At the second, again, understand when users understand your app and when not, and just maybe change some stuff. And it's not a bad thing to copy from the big guys, like Google, what they're doing, Facebook, what they're doing, Apple, what they're doing. Again, there are tons of research behind the scene, so just use those.
Cool. All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.